So, earlier today, we planted the garlic, as you saw in a previous video. That was today, October 26th. And now it's after supper. And after supper in the autumn, there's something we will often do together as a family, or my partner and myself. Look forward to when she's with me in these videos. Anyway, we will spend about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour after supper, and we will do some simple transformations. For instance, we will shell some beans, or we will take the cover off of some ground cherries, or remove some sorghum grain from their stems, that kind of thing. Or we could also, if we wanted to make some salsa verde with our tomatillos, and we could shell these as well. They've got their shells on them. Or maybe we might want to do some seed collection from our peppers, and so on. There's all sorts of stuff that we could be doing. Or we could, the corn, we could remove the corn from its cob, etc. So tonight I'm going to just do a little bit of shelling of beans and of ground cherries and of sorghum. Now, these beans, I just harvested them yesterday, and we've had several days of rain. They were dry, but because of the rain, the outside has reabsorbed a little bit of water, so they're not going to be crunchy like I had mentioned in the video. You know, they might have been, but I can tell that they're dry. But because they've absorbed a tiny little bit of water, I'm definitely going to be leaving them in this basket here. We have a basket with a mesh bottom. I'll be leaving them in this basket at least another week or two to make sure that these beans are completely dry before putting them in one of our jars back here. We put them in jars like these as well with this type of lid. So it's not a seal, it's not hermetically sealed or anything like that. And but before we put them in there, we want to make sure they're completely dry. Although when we do put them in the jars, and I'll be able to show you that in a later part of the video, I'll show you what we have back here. When we do put them in the jars, we'll add a little bit of rice to the jar. And so if there's a tiny percentage of humidity in there, the rice should normally take care of it. It's what we've been doing for the last couple of years, and it works really, really well. But for the moment, they're just going to stay in these baskets for, you know, at least another, probably another week. This one's nice and crunchy. What I love about shelling beans is we have many varieties, and over the years those varieties have also mixed up with each other, and so we have many unique varieties we've never seen before, because of course they reproduce with each other and they create unique varieties. And so every bean seems to be different, and so the colors, the shapes, the designs on the bean and so on, because we've got many that are all just one color, and then many that are two colors, and with all sorts of different kinds of designs, dots or lines or curvy lines or spirals or whatever. It's quite something to look at. And so it's like each one is like opening up a little gift. And they are like gifts. They're gifts from the world. They're gifts from nature. And it's just wonderful. And so it's a lot of fun. And it's just very satisfying too, because we know that with these beans, you know, some of us here at home don't eat meat, and so these beans are great because they're protein for the whole winter. And really, you know, we can make lots of things with them. We're going to attempt to make a type of a milk with these. Because if you can make soy milk, well, soy is a type of bean, so you should probably be able to make milk out of these too. We'll have to see. I've never done it before, so we'll see. But we're going to try and make cheese or a type of tofu out of these beans as well. And all sorts of other stuff. Obviously, baked beans and all the other traditional things that everybody knows about. So, yeah, normally you should be hearing crunch, 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 but These beans, like I said, because of the rain, they've absorbed a little bit of water, so they're not quite so crunchy anymore, but they were. So that's for now, that's our beans. I'd like to show you some other stuff, but that's kind of like what it looks like. Normally the whole bottom would get filled up, and we let them dry for a couple weeks, continue to dry. Now the one we got here is some ground cherries. I've done a video about that maybe a month back. So the important thing about the ground cherries is that they be yellow. Normally when they fall off the plant onto the ground, it's their name, ground cherries, they are yellow at that point. But sometimes they can fall off when they're not yellow, or not quite. And especially this time of year, because we got a frost a few days ago. It didn't kill everything, but it did pretty well do away with all the leaves on our ground cherry plants. But they don't seem to, but the stems aren't really dead, but the leaves are all sort of wilted. And so when that happens, the plant will start dropping the fruit even when it's not quite ripe. But we'll pick it up and we'll let it ripen inside. And being inside these shells, the shells help the fruit continue to ripen, because of course there's still a little bit of energy inside those leaves which make up the shell. So what we're going to do with these ground cherries, we just, together once again, we'll just have, you see this? Okay, this one's still a little bit green, so I'd rather keep it in its shell, leave it there, because like I said, there's still energy in that shell, so it's going to be able to use that energy to continue to ripen. So I just put it back in the basket, because I'd prefer not to shell them while they're still green. Want to really wait till they ripen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in this jar a little bit later. I will rinse them and freeze them. And then when I'm ready to make a jam, I'll make a jam out of them. And it's really easy to make jam out of this stuff, and it makes one of the best jams. All right, so that's the ground cherries. Beans, ground cherries. We have some sorghum here too. A nice little bouquet of sorghum. We like to use our plants as decorations all over the house. We hang them up and stuff, or we might put them in bouquets like this. It allows them to dry. And they're decorations too. And then when we're ready for them, well, we just take them off the walls or take them out of their vases, and we start to process them. So with these, I'm just going to be taking the seeds off of their stems. And these are fairly fresh still. I harvested them maybe a week ago, so they're not really dry. So normally I would put them in these jars, but in this jar is some sorghum from last summer that we actually just took off the wall maybe last week, and took them off their stems and put them in here. So I mean, that's really dry. But this isn't dry yet, so I'm not going to be putting it in that jar. But what I'm going to do is probably just leave it on this plate, and we'll make some bread out of it in a few days. So one of these, 3 of these stems like this, like maybe about this much, is enough to make about two loaves of bread, if it's whole sorghum. But if we decide to mix it with some, let's say a little bit of wheat sourdough, then this will make 3 loaves of bread, because it'll be maybe 1/3 wheat sourdough and 2/3 sorghum. Or we might mix it with corn as well, because we make flour out of that too. Because basically, so you just basically take a stem and you just pull the seeds off the stem, and there you go. They come off quite easily, and the drier they are, the easier it is. That's one thing for most things. If let's say you're growing something and you're not sure how to get the seed off, whatever it is, whether it's wheat or barley or sorghum or beans or whatever, the drier it is, the easier it is. In fact, it can reach a certain dryness that it just falls off all by itself. You don't have to do anything. And then you see, and then this is going to give us a plate of a whole bunch of seeds. Might be a couple stems in there, which I can take off. Here's one, for instance, so a little stem. So I'm just going to take that and remove the seeds from it. And then we take these seeds, we'll throw them in our blender, and we'll make a flour out of them. You don't need a fancy, stone mill or whatever. Just a regular run-of-the-mill milkshake blender will turn this into flour. It might not be very, very fine. We got one from India that we got from an Indian grocery store here where we live, and it makes really, really fine flour, which is nice. And it wasn't that much more expensive than a regular run-of-the-mill blender that you can get for your kitchen. So that's it. It's all a bit of sorghum, some beans, some ground cherries, a few other vegetables if we wanted to do them. And so this is how we spend 45 minutes to an hour after supper, maybe 3 or 4 times a week in the fall to get things going so that we have all our stuff ready for the things obviously that we want to dry. And it'll be ready all winter. Have a great evening.